you can't just start with so much silence on if someone's just listening. Just listening onto the audio. It's just like if you're on YouTube, we're just smiling. But I guess you can't really just start with that much silence.
Well, it'd be kind of fun. It'd be funny if you're like here and I'm there.
What is going on? Welcome to Pardon My Mind. Pardon us. Pardon us. I think we're both a little wackadoodle this morning because it's a Sunday morning for us. We haven't really recorded on a morning for quite a long time, I think. And I had a horrible sleep. I was just telling Hero before we popped on. I won't tell you all my woes and trials and tribulations, but I've been an ongoing. Haunted. I'm haunted. What the heck? Well, I do live in a really old house. Okay, wow, this is gonna be like almost part of my ADHD now at this point. Okay, because we got to get into talking about who's coming on the show, but no, I've just had like some ongoing shoulder issues, and last night literally it was like a heartbeat. I was like throb, throb, throb in my shoulder. I'm like, oh my god, I can't sleep. It was kind of brutal, but anyway, that's why I'm a bit zombie like this morning. But speaking of old houses and being haunted, it's funny that you brought that up because I was going to actually explain or tell the people why, if you're watching on YouTube, since we popped back doing the show the past few episodes, it looks like I'm in a closet. As you can see, you've got my clothing rack behind me. And the reason is because we live in a house that's over 100 years old. And back then, the peeps didn't really create many closets. There's not a lot of closet spaces in these old houses. And so I'm essentially, my office is in our second bedroom upstairs, which is also AKA our walk-in closet with racks. So that's why you're seeing the clothing racks. Not like Rachel's not like actually in a closet, but just thought I'd explain that to you folks. Yeah.
She's also in my guest room.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? Because then I thought you were gonna yeah, that's right. And I thought you were going to go with the because I kind of like threw that hook out there because I said in the closet and I thought you were going to go in, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
No.
But speaking, you know what? Again, sometimes
good segue.
We have these segues we don't really mean to create. They just blah, blah, blah out of our mouths.
Magic.
It's magic. It's podcast magic. Today we are talking to the lovely Leighton Alexander Williams. Leighton actually came to us through another guest of ours from Border to Border Entertainment, and that fellow's name is Charlie David.
Such a mensch. Such
a mensch. You can see him on one of the previous episodes from a while back.
Charlie, we love you, Charlie.
Sound like an old Jewish woman. I love it. Canadian fellow. The production company Border to Border is a Canadian production company. They predominantly do a lot of shows on OutTV, I believe. And I think that's usually what the production company does, but that's not really what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Leighton. Leighton is actually going to be on a brand new web series. I think it's a web series. I've got to clarify that. It's we got a little bit of information on it. It's called Settle Down, and Settle Down is interesting because it's first when we got connected with Leighton, it wasn't said that it was based on it's a podcaster in the show, which I didn't know until I read more about it, which is just interesting and makes sense as to why maybe they thought about us. Mm-hmm. So it is a queer podcaster. I don't know if it's actually set in Canada. I'll have to ask Leighton about this. Right. But Leighton actually plays the podcast host's partner in the show. And it is basically LGBTQ plus podcast where they it's like a matchmaking podcast, essentially. So I think that every episode focuses on a new person that this person is actually going to find a potential mate for, and talks about on the podcast. So really interesting. I don't know if you want to add to that here.
I think you did a great job.
Oh, thanks. Check mark. That's not really what I was looking for, but thanks. But, I think that what we really want to focus on maybe today too, we're really stoked to have him on the show is, and because I was, doing a little bit of a deep dive into Leighton, and he really talked about when he first got into the community, into acting, because he's a person of color, and someone such as himself was really typecast a lot in beginning stages of his career. So I think he even mentioned like he would play the pimp or, you know, whomever, what other kind of typecast would be for a person of color. And this, again, I want him to correct me if I'm wrong, but this might be one of his first like really breakout roles where it's like, yes, I get to play like a human being. Doesn't really matter what my ethnicity is, but I am, you know, a queer person who is the partner of the lead in the show. And it just sounds like he's really kind of starting to make his mark, which is really exciting. So,
And also, it's really
yeah.
wonderful that, again, some of this also within the Canadian talent and also as a relation of the queer and of human of color community.
Yeah.
I guess if we want to call it that, it's just really lovely to know that the ripple effects that people have in their voice and their presence and how they identify and utilizing that for creating shift and change, to be
Yeah.
a disruptor, but in a positive way, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely I think in a positive way, especially, you know, these days with what's going on, people starting to, interestingly enough, we think we're in the modern age or era, but people starting to be silenced again based on their race, based on their essentially life choices, which is nobody else's business. But
Mhm.
so this show is coming out, I believe, on Valentine's Day, actually, which is coming up next week. Hopefully, we'll have. I will try my hardest. We'll get this episode out prior to that,
Right.
so that I can be like, oh yeah, okay, Valentine's Day, February 14th, which is a Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, so just really stoked to meet Leighton, and I think he'll be popping in from out east, so back in Toronto, so he's 3 hours ahead of us. And I think he's also a writer and maybe director as well, and also really into fitness, which is something that
hmm
Hero and I are into as well. So curious to know how that
hmm
fits into his life and maybe helps with his mental health. And
Totally.
yeah, cheers. What are you drinking?
I am drinking a cold brew
Hmm.
with oat milk in my Aerochino. So like a cold brew latte with
Aerochino? What's that?
from that Nespresso little black cylinder frother.
Oh, okay. It's a sorry. Oh, okay. Here's Leighton okay, all over the place. Here's Leighton. Leighton is coming down the pipes here, folks. Here he is. I always think it's funny when you say admitting. I'm admitting Leighton.
I know, right? It's like,
Yeah,
okay, you have been admitted into the part in my mind. Welcome.
yeah.
Hi,
Hi,
Leighton. How
Leighton.
are ya?
How are you guys doing?
Good. Nice to
Really
meet you.
well.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You look your eyes are spectacular. Holy moly.
It's the ring light.
No, 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 no. No ring light can just make someone look like that. Trust us. Trust us.
Yeah, I know. It's like that's like a whole other kind of education, I guess.
Yes.
Learning to play
Yes.
with the ring light.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally.
Yeah. So
Self tapes after
welcome.
self tapes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And are you tuning in from Toronto with us or on the East Coast?
Yeah, I'm from Toronto.
Okay,
Nice.
fantastic. Right
It's so
on.
funny. It's funny because we talk about like, because we're like really on the West Coast. And even though Toronto's not really on the East Coast, still us folks from the West Coast, they East Coast is Toronto, which
That's
is,
true.
I
Yes.
know we're just packaged over there.
you
Right.
are. We just clump you in one,
Yeah.
one thing over there.
How's
Yeah.
it? Is it snowing in Vancouver?
Oh yes, yeah, it has been. I'm actually in Vernon, so I'm in the Okanagan, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but
No. No, no.
yeah, so I'm like, it's kind of the wine country of BC. So
Ooh la
yeah,
la.
I know, right?
Mhm.
All right.
Gorgeous.
Super fancy. But we typically get a little bit more snow than in Vancouver, but then we get like desert like weather in the summer, so it'll be like. It's great because we have a guest on that's Canadian, so you
Yeah.
know what Celsius is. Like so many people, you know?
That's true.
So it gets to like 35, 36 degrees typically in the summer, like consistently. So that's,
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
awful.
you think so. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
love it. So we just jump right into this
We
as,
do.
Yes.
yeah,
Let's do
that's
it.
kind of our shtick. So Leighton, we just did a little kind of brief introduction to yourself, but we always like to have our guests kind of introduce themselves. And I know you have no idea what we just said about you is all great things, I promise. But basically just introduced the show, settled down, and just talked a little bit about, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of introduced you as sort of like this might be one of your more breakout roles, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, so maybe continue on with that narrative, perhaps.
Yeah. So I'm one of the leads on Settle Down, which is a new comedy for OutTV that follows Mason Ellis. He's this love guru who's on the rise, and he owns a podcast. And as he's gaining all this notoriety and success, based on giving relationship advice, his marriage is falling apart behind the scenes. And I play his husband, Jared. And this is my first series regular role on a TV show. So I'm excited about that. And it's a good amalgamation of heart and humor, great relationship advice, laugh out loud funny, and I'm excited for everyone to see it.
That is so fantastic. And how did that role come about? How did that lead you into this role?
Yeah, I worked with Alexander Nunez before. He's the writer and the lead on the show. We worked on a show together called Avocado Toast, season 2, as co-stars. And so he was familiar with my work, and we were at the CSA Awards, and then he's just like, Leighton, I kind of have this script like floating around, and I think you'd be so perfect for the character of Jared. Give it a read and let me know what you think. And I read it, and I'm just like cackling. I'm like, why are you so timid about this? Like, it's a yes. It's a enthusiastic, strong yes. And we got the funding for it. He also, I also sent him, I was a part of the CFC. For those who aren't familiar, it's Canada's film center. And I was a part of the conservatory. And at the end of that program, you do a film that kind of just catapults you into the industry. And I did a film that I wrote called Queenie and Alpha. And I play this pair of twins. It's on YouTube if you want to check it out. Not the plug. But
keep plugging. That's what we're about. Yes.
And it just talks about the experience as an actor. At sometimes you have to leave parts of yourself behind, and specifically as a queer actor. And it just that film really spoke to Alex as well, and I remember him reaching out to me. So I think that played a heavy hand in him seeing me in this role and seeing me in a different light.
That's really amazing. I have to just kind of take that spider web when you're talking about leaving parts of yourself behind as a queer actor. If that's kind of what you're speaking of, can you speak more about that? I mean, I myself am queer. Very queer, but I'm just curious from your lens and perspective what that means to you and how that might show up for you or other people that you've been around in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that for me, like I can only speak from my personal experience, leaving theater school, I'm someone that I graduated around 2014, 2015 at York, and it was a different time then. It wasn't as PC. So being 6'3", being Black, there wasn't a lot of queer actors that looked like me and that fit that model. So I was taught that if you want to have a career, you'd have to just be heteronormative. You'd have to lean into that side, right? And I just took it as, that I don't see any blueprints. So that's just how it is. And for the start of my career, that's all I did. I even shied away from queer roles. Like whenever I would be, that would come up, like from my agent, I would be like, oh, that's so scary to just put myself out there that. Because I don't want to be pigeonholed or anything like that. A big part of my career was just how can I fit into the mold of heteronormativity and that, because I thought that's the only roles or only way of finding success. And that's not the case. There's actors now like Coleman Domingo who I'm so inspired by, that are openly Black, queer, and play a whole range of characters, right? Regardless of sexuality, regardless of status, regardless of walks of life. And that's what I want to do. Right. I guess
that's kind of one of the, I don't know if you want to use the word scary, but maybe scary parts of being an actor, to not be typecast. Like you don't, like that's kind of one of the, or although there's a lot of actors that have made their careers on being typecast as well.
Of
And
course.
now that I say it out loud, but I did read something with you talking about how you did feel like, I know you said pigeonhole, but you did feel typecast on a different level with regards to being a person of color in the beginning of your career, perhaps.
Of
And
course.
so, like, how that's so frustrating though, because it's like I can't imagine how frustrating that would be, because you're like, dude, I just want to like break out and, you know, be me and
Yeah.
have variety, like what's going on. So
And it was like, Rachel, it was like this double-edged sword where it's like,
yeah,
my typecast was something that was far removed from how I walk around in the world, where I would be playing a lot of these pimps and like just these nefarious characters, which is fun to step into. But when that's the only thing, then
Right.
it kind of feels quite limiting. And and yeah, I think every actor just wants the opportunity to play whatever's under the sun, you know?
yeah.
And
It's
it's
acting.
fun.
That's
It's acting, of course.
Yeah.
Of
Don't
course.
overcomplicate it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Wow. So as far as when it comes to your foray into acting and the seed of your love of the art of performance and also conveying storyline and transcending into a character, where did that start in your life? Can you pinpoint any times in your life where that might have started for you, like the brute, the steed, the spark?
Yeah, where I got bit by the acting bug.
Absolutely. If you want to call it a bug or you want to call it a fairy, whatever you want.
I want to call it a bug because it's a play on words.
yeah.
In grade two, I was a part of a musical called A Bug's Life.
Oh, geez.
Oh,
And I was cast as an army ant. I only had one line in this entire musical,
That's
right?
cute.
And
Yeah.
I just remember it was my turn. I get out on stage and I see my mom in the audience, and she's just beaming, the biggest smile, just like looking at me. And I say my line, and I could just tell she was so proud. And I'm like, I want to recreate that facial expression doing this. Because, once I found out that playing is a profession, I'm just like, I think I'm pretty good at it.
Really? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So were you into musical theater too, or was it mostly stage?
Yeah, I started with musical theater. I love, and I started with stage. I went to theater for my training, but the fact of the matter is, I'm not a strong enough singer to go into theater. I can hold my own. I can hold a tune.
Yeah.
So my musical theater career, I couldn't really do that, but I could dance, I can act, and yeah.
So it wasn't like, because I know you're fairly close-ish to like New York, so it wasn't really like, actually that also kind of segues into another question I have for you about getting into the scene and whether it's still, you know, you still could actually find work in Canada and not have to move to the US necessarily. Because I think I read something where you were talking about that as well, how you would hope that there's more and more opportunity, and there could be more and more opportunity in Canada. There's just, I don't know what do you think is holding us back? I mean, oh my God, now the whole political situation, we don't even need to go there, but I mean, maybe it has to go there because maybe that's one of the reasons too, as to why, you know, we're being held back a little bit.
Yeah, there's this, oh gosh, how to start unpacking this. There is this untrue belief that our American counterparts are more talented than us, right? And the deal is, when a lot of American productions come to Canada, it's cheaper for them to shoot here. And there's a deal where they have to audition a certain amount of Canadian actors for roles. And here's the thing, why that deal isn't really strong is because they can audition us, but that doesn't mean they have to cast us.
That's right. They just have to give you that opportunity.
Exactly. It's just an opportunity to be seen and win over the casting directors. But it's at the end of the day, we need to be cast. It's when you put us in these projects and you see that it's like, oh, this actor can actually hold their own. You start to build a star meter for Canadian actors, and you could see that that we're not second tier or second rate. So I think that's really the issue with American productions shooting here, but only casting the lead roles with American cast and then plugging in Canadian actors here or there. So, and the talent's here, right? The talent.
Oh, absolutely.
So which is why a lot of Canadian actors, the only way to make it is when you break over on the American side, get representation, and come through on that side. And what's so crazy, what drives me bonkers, is that sometimes you can just tell Canadian casting that, oh, you're located in the States now. Oh, I'm just down in LA, and you're hot now. You're hot all the time. And it just gives you this appeal, and it's like the talent level hasn't changed.
No.
But do you think that has a sense of, again, it's an allure? Like it's kind of like a status symbol? I mean, like I mean, again, I'm being very literal here, but let's say you just move to LA for a week and it's like, oh, I'm living in LA for the week, I'm whatever on a project, like, you know what I mean? Like how can that have a sense of notoriety unless if they're like looking for your credits or looking for your history, they're looking for your experience, and because it shows that. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
and there's this thing where it's like work begets work. So if you just appear to be working, especially abroad, that just it's automatically a magnet for other in most cases, not all the time. But yeah, so if you can play that to your strength, then it'll work in your favor.
Is that something that you've done yet? Move to the city, or is it something that you want to do, or are you like kind of like fuck that? Like, come on.
I would love to work on more American projects and productions because that's the type of TV I watch and I love watching. To be on like a White Lotus or Succession, something like that. It's just it's content that I'm just really drawn to and a bit more risque. Getting a U.S. team is a part of that, and once you have that, once you break in and getting your visa, getting your green card, and all those things in place, then it can become a possibility for you. And I just got my green card, so
yay! Congratulations! Amazing. So I'm curious as well, is that when you're talking about, because we love getting to know the person behind what they do and why it matters to them. That's one thing that we really love. So when you're talking about examples like the White Lotus and
fashion.
Yes, exactly.
I'm obsessed. Yeah.
What are some shows? What can you, if you go back to like childhood to maybe adolescence to young adulthood to current life, like what are some of those beacons of media or maybe actors or actresses or humans that inspired you to maybe continue along that path, or that gave you kind of an idea of, I want to be there in my own way?
Wow, that's a really great question. Okay, if I have to flash forward, I would say just seeing Will Smith's trajectory of how he changed from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and just being really funny and into doing something serious. The film The Pursuit of Happiness really did
that was great
when I watched it. And I took Will as a serious actor, and I'm just like, you know what, I want to tell stories that evoke emotion too, not just entertain. And because I think there's something quite special and spiritual about that. And to that vein, my family was obsessed with the show called Glee that I put them on, and we would watch it together. I have a Jamaican background, right? And my parents, especially my mom, had like a strict way of thinking, just culturally growing up. And homophobia is rooted in Jamaican culture. So to watch a show like Glee, where she fell in love with Kurt Hummel's character, who's openly queer, and his like alpha dad is just so supportive of him. And I could watch my mom's heart melt and those old ideologies leave her through television.
Yes.
Changing her language, right?
Yes.
And I saw firsthand the power of art and how
Yes.
and I know that like whenever kids say that they want to be an artist, parents get shocked and scared. And it's like, oh my god, no, don't do it. And it's like, do something meaningful with your life, like be a doctor, like.
Well,
But
formal
art has the
education.
power to change minds, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, that was another defining moment for me where I saw the power of television, and I want to be a part of that.
That's so cool. So only because you brought it up about how, your mom's opinion or just how she was brought up,
Yes.
was she accepting of you growing
Yes.
up?
Yeah. And
Okay.
I think that wouldn't have happened if she didn't meet Kurt Hummel first, right? From Glee.
Mhm.
Really? Okay.
You
So
know?
so while you're because like I don't know how old you are, but like I'm guessing that perhaps you hadn't come out before you guys were watching the
No,
show.
not
Okay.
before Glee.
Okay.
Yeah, and that
Okay.
gave me orphan ease when I was finally in theater school, and it came time to delve into my work and just own myself in just fully.
Yeah.
It was an easier conversation to have.
That's huge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is absolute, like that right there is like, it's interesting because I now, nowadays there's just, I mean, there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of content, there's a lot of crap out there. There's a lot of, to be honest, it's just like, I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed with all the choices we have now with streaming and just what we, decide to watch or not. That is just, it's so lovely. Like I really try to pick and choose what I watch, but it's lovely to know that there's still shows and things out there that can have a major impact and aren't just necessarily just kind of fluffy, kind of,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
Entertainment.
entertainment.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
which I think sometimes we need an escape that way too.
Oh, of
But
course, there's a space for that too.
there
Just
is.
to unwind, and
Mhm.
but there's the space for the other art too that just makes you want to change your life.
Absolutely,
You know?
absolutely.
Yeah, well, and also not that it's about this, but I think it also it's a good little anecdote. Like I hadn't seen Pose for a long time. Like I saw it just recently, and my partner Craig and we watched it together, and he showed it to me, and I've heard about it. But again, that's a really another good example where there's a lot of heaviness, but a lot of lightness and humor, like within the developments. And I learned a lot about, like, let's say the trans community or the ballroom
Yes.
community in ways that I hadn't seen it, even though it is a syndicated TV show. So the power of character development, the power of telling story through real life, but then bringing it in a way of maybe more broadcast for people that might see it in a different way. I think that's the power of media and the power of storytelling through film, through acting, and then also having the right representation of character and actors that can bring that to life. And that's kind of a thread that you keep speaking about, is utilizing your lived experiences, but also transmitting that into maybe a fictional or maybe a non-fictional kind of framework for people to really digest it and be like, I'm making a difference through this healing art of acting. And through transmitting reality into reality. I think that's really a gift that not all people have.
Eloquently said. I have nothing to add to that.
This is how he works sometimes. I'm the reaction. Like I'll react to him, and he's very articulate. And
Wow.
yeah, I know.
Well said.
Blame it on the autism. Blame it on the autism.
Oh, I love you.
Pardon my
Oh my
mind.
gosh, yeah, exactly. Pardon your autism. Pardon my ADHD. Pardon all that crap.
I got that too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Back
Go
to
ahead, Rachel.
no, I was just something I was thinking about. Back to the like crossing the border. In the community, in the acting community, I know I said we weren't really going to touch on political stuff, but we don't have to touch too much on it. But I am wondering the landscape of what's kind of happening right now, and the new person that we shall not actually name who's taken over our neighbors. I won't even say his name anymore. Like I literally won't say his name.
Say their name.
Yeah,
Say
no,
their
I know.
name.
Usually I say he who should not be named, but have you noticed? Is there like a buzz, or is there is there any change that might be bubbling or happening in the acting community because of anything happening in the States?
Over
Is there
there.
any? Yeah.
Not that I've heard, not yet.
Not really?
Anyway.
Not yet. Okay.
Not
Because
yet.
I also know that, like, for example, on the West Coast and in Vancouver, which is like Hollywood North is what they've called
Yeah.
it for so many years, I know that that kind of slowed down for quite a while. Like after COVID, obviously, but then after the writers and actors strike and all
It
that
was
kind
a
of
strike.
stuff. The strike, yeah. So are you noticing that things are really picking up again?
Yeah, things are
Yeah.
slow because after the strike, we all thought we were going to be hit with this deluge, this tsunami of work, right? Of projects
Right.
that were going to be
Right.
greenlit. But
Right.
last year, they were just trickling out. It wasn't as overwhelming as everyone thought it was going to be.
That's
So
what I've heard. Yeah.
fingers crossed that this year is when we're going to get that backlog that we were waiting for, because a lot of projects were just on hold and waiting.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We were just waiting for them to be greenlit. So we're still waiting for that wave.
Okay.
So fingers crossed that this is the year that happens. And I still think it's in America's best interest to shoot here because it is cheaper for most productions to do that.
Yeah.
So
The dollar is pretty darn good right now.
yeah. So hopefully, trade wars and all of that stuff aside, that mess aside,
Yeah.
if things remain the same, then I think it would be beneficial for everyone.
Another thought I had about that, and I'm no expert at all in this, but do you think because of all the different shifts that are happening politically in the US, and given that Canada has such a blueprint for filming, whether if it's Vancouver, Toronto, as two main areas, I suppose, do you think that maybe more people may want to support Canadian film in some ways, like people that are of diversity, people that are of backgrounds that are actually progressive and that are wholesome and open, like they might want to actually seek out Canadian production or work, or maybe like, I mean, it's more of a hypothetical question, but I think it's actually something that could be interesting to hear your thoughts on.
Yeah, no, I think that is hypothetical. Where your question, just to reiterate, is if Canadians are more inclined to support Canadian work, or is it Americans?
Americans. Are Americans more likely to support Canadian film and want to go film in Canada as opposed to film in the US, even though their union, their guilds, or the people that they're with aren't opposed, like they're on the same wavelength as supporting and diversification in film and not like silencing voices or anything like that?
You just mean like the political landscape right now in the States and how so many people are being silenced and the diversity is kind of being subdued or
basically trying to say it without saying it in a sense.
Absolutely, and I think that's their way around it, right? If they go to a place where there's more free speech,
exactly, that's what I mean.
and through art, then they won't be necessarily penalized for it. I agree with that.
Okay.
That's interesting, actually. Like, I never really thought about if it's really going to hit the entertainment industry with all the stuff that's going on with,
I
silencing.
think it could.
Yeah.
I think it could.
In fact, it's in this time where artists come alive, right? And it's like one quote that Philip Aiken said to me. He's like, as an artist, if you're not mad about something, you need to find something to get mad about, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot to be pissed about. So I think writers are busy right now.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, and also we had another incredible human on the show in the past, and I'm not sure if you might know the name Carla Hall.
No. Can you tell me more?
Yeah, so she's a celebrity contestant from Top Chef, the reality show, but also was on that show, The Chew, which is kind of like the food version of The View. But so she's very prominent in public media, and she's on a lot of celebrity like cooking shows. But the reason why I bring her up is that I believe that there was one really key thing that links to what you said. And one thing she said to Rachel and I is that when in the time when she was feeling typecast or frustrated or feeling silenced to not having equal right in terms of on the production, her kind of through line was like frustration creates change or creates action. It creates decision. So when you feel a certain feel of stagnance or being blocked, that is what creates change. So in the same thread of what you're saying with people that writers are busy or actors might get their big break or that they start to speak out in ways they may have been hesitant to or didn't want to before, these types of political shifts in society, as one example, really do create those changes. And I want to bring that back to what you're doing with Settle Down, because I think in some ways, indirectly, you are creating that change in that narrative of how people may perceive a culture, an identity, a subject matter of how it's delivered in, such as a podcast within a fictional state. Like, I think there's a lot of phenomenal things that you're doing just from what you've shared with Rachel and I. So what I'm curious about is that what are you, because it hasn't launched yet, what are you hopeful if you had the desired outcome? What kind of impact would you love for your project to have with society? How would you hope for them to perceive it?
You're on fire today, Hero. I just have to say, you're on freaking fire. Like, what did you drink this morning? Like, what was in that? Because, yeah. Anyway, sorry. I just kibotched your answer there, Leighton. Go ahead. Please.
Yeah, but let Leighton speak. God.
I know. Wow.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. First of all, I want people to be able to see themselves in this story, right? Regardless of your sexual orientation, race, you should be able to see yourself in Settle Down. And I think because it is a show that is centered on relationships, whether you're single or in a relationship, it gives great advice on love and how to communicate and just be a better partner. And in this day and age, I think that's needed, right? And while it is a comedy, it's like I was saying to Rachel before, there is importance in seeing marginalized groups experience joy and happiness. I feel like that is a form of rebellion. And for queer people to just have escapism and see themselves like living their best lives on screen, that just does something. It's aspirational, right?
Yeah.
Where it's not so far-fetched and fictional. And I think the show at this time, coming out at this time, is it can grant that a sense of comfort to our queer viewers. For non-queer viewers, it's you can still see yourself in some of these characters, because every episode there's a new client that makes it and addresses with like relationship issues, whatever they're going through, and it's super diverse in what they're going through, right? So I'm sure you'll, if not see yourself, you'll see your cousin, your brother, a friend that you recognize,
exactly,
archetypally.
But even just like not for non-queer people to watch any kind of show with that subject matter, it's so important because it allows it to be normal. It's just, so yeah, it is very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
I think it did.
I think it answered it really, really well. I want to kind of go back, if you're willing to be comfortable. And again, like, we can pause. You could say next. Like, I don't want to put any kind of provocative or anything like that. But you mentioned your mother, which I'm a mama's boy. I'm a parent's boy. Like, I don't have a large family. I really cherish my parents.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up with other elements of your family? Whether if it was your father, or if you have siblings or cousins or other people that symbolize family to you, even if they're non-biological. Who are some of the core anchors in your life that helped support you and who you are, but also maybe help form the person you became today?
Yeah, no, my mom is played a heavy hand in who I am. She's just so strong and funny and just confident in who she is. And she always saw me as a superstar, right? So it's really great when I had a strong academic background. So when I made the choice to go into art specifically, there wasn't necessarily fear or worry. She's just like, yeah, no, I think if anyone can do it, it would be you.
That's great.
My dad had the same, because they would watch my shows, and he's just like, yeah, you could be an actor. And they funded my schooling. Well, I had to pay a third because, they didn't want me to be spoiled.
Yeah, of course.
and yeah, so just I'm very fortunate. I understand that a lot of actors, there's a pressure that they go through of not having support from family, and that can be very disheartening. But that's not my storyline. And I'm very grateful for that. And like I said, in terms of queerness and coming out, it's still a journey. It was a journey, I should say. My mom is where she's supposed to be now, like super liberal and loving. And at Christmas dinner, she actually met my partner for the first time, so that was really lovely.
That's nice.
And
yeah,
but it starts from fear, right? Just fear of like, she's like, you're already Black and you're going through this world. There's so much that's going to be thrown at you. Adding another layer of persecution on top of it and obstacles. Yeah. I just don't want that for you, right? That's where it started from. That fear. But
wow,
once
she's a smart lady though, like sounds.
You know, so
yeah.
It was very easy to work with a parent that has that mentality once they realize that you're good, as opposed to, oh, I actually hate this way of life. That was never the case. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is really amazing. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a younger brother who's so cool.
Yeah. So do they all live in Toronto still, or? Yeah. Awesome. So that must be kind of like, what do you feel like going to the States? Do you feel like do you have a support network there?
My best friend lives in New York.
Okay.
Great. Love New York.
Yeah. Shout out to Lavelle Adams Gray, who's on a show called Power, which just wrapped its final season and
great.
Doing very well for himself. So should I choose a state to go to, I would definitely want to go to New York. Just because I know more people there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, then that's the thing. Like, you talk about such a strong support network you have here. I mean, obviously we live in a day and age now where with technology you can keep in touch with people in all kinds of amazing ways, but still to have that physical person there for you for support, especially like going through a new transition and all that kind of stuff. So
100%.
Yeah.
I remember in 2018, I moved to Vancouver for a bit.
Oh, okay.
And, I was living out in Vancouver for a bit, and my experience was made better because my roommates were my best friends at the time. I could not imagine being solo dolo in that city. I found it hard to make friends over there.
It's so hard to make friends in Vancouver.
About Vancouver. Yeah.
No, a lot of people make their social connections, whether if it's from like their school, their job, anything like that. And sometimes when they leave those environments, then the people that they think they're close with don't make the effort unless if it's so convenient right in front of them, which, I think it's very different. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not from Toronto, but I have friends and family in Toronto. And whenever I've been in Toronto, even for a few days or here and there, if I've had conversations even with people on the street, not that I seek them out because we're Vancouverites, no shade to Vancouverites, but but there's a lot more realness in terms of that. And whether if it's because it's further east than Vancouver, if it's more close to New York, if it's closer to a different part of different energetics, I guess, that are grown up in that part of the coast. It's just not, Vancouver's very passive. It's very, as if I might quote Pearl from season 7 of Drag Race, it's very flazé-da. Like, it's just like, whatever. Very laissez-faire. There's a sense of like, they call us the British Columbia, but it's like, actually there is a lot of British influence because it's this comment. It's like, I don't have time for you. I mean, I actually want your love really deep inside, but I don't have time for you.
Yeah.
We're like cats. It's like,
what? Cats for sure.
That's
and
so funny. Yeah.
So it's just
maybe Toronto's got more of the influence from New York that kind of like,
I think so.
Very outgoing. This is who I am. What you see is who I am. Blunt. I don't know.
I don't know if it's personal bias just because I was raised here, but I felt like there's just a stronger sense of community in Toronto. Where, for example, like as an actor, sometimes when you're out of work, the best way to pass the time is to create your own work, right? And to rally with friends and tell a story, get a camera, just to keep the engine going, right? And
Right.
keep sharp and stay in classes. And there's always events happening where you can meet and network with folks. That exists in Toronto. So when I went to Vancouver, and as someone who creates my own work, in the downtimes when I was looking for that, it just wasn't around, or maybe I was out of the loop as but I didn't see it. Mind you, that was back in 2018. I'm hopeful that Vancouver has shifted, but that was a challenge.
Yeah, and maybe post-COVID it did. I don't know.
As someone that has stayed in Vancouver, because Rachel moved to Vernon in like 2018, I think, or 2017, perhaps.
Actually, it was like 2018, 2017. Yeah.
So I think as someone that's born and raised in Vancouver, and no shade to those that were like born in Vancouver but grew up in Surrey or grew up in Coquitlam, like outside of like the downtown West Side core, because there is a slight different energetic with that in the community and people. I think Vancouver has changed a little bit from COVID in terms of connection, community, people coming together. Now, I don't know much about it from the entertainment side of things. Like we have our stadiums that are all clustered together really closely, and those in terms of concerts or presenters, like we get anyone that would go on a tour, we get those people here too. In terms of acting, in terms of media, I think there is a little bit more productions that I see. And in terms of events and marketing and community, I only know it from my industry, which is like yoga and wellness. And so there is definitely less of that, I think, because of COVID, making it harder for groups of people to come together in a safe, more communal environment. So I think Toronto has a lot more of that, one, because of its population density, but also because its downtown is so sprawling with very distinctive neighborhoods that also then creates different communities and different clusters of mindsets that might come together within their own core. And Vancouver is such a young and kind of sprawling city in its own way that our neighborhoods don't really link together. And the neighborhoods that are there are stretched out even within that being said. So I don't know if there's really a lot when it comes to that, which is why I'm glad you're in Toronto for that purpose, because you get to create that community. And same there goes for New York, because New York is like Toronto like that too. You have everywhere you walk through the blocks, you see something different. You see huddles, you see coffee shops, you see people creating. I always see photography in someone's hand, film in someone's hand, people doing a music video in the middle of the street during traffic. Like it's just a different pace. There's a currency that's going on, which is pretty phenomenal. So threading that into like where you are now in your day, and as we kind of not fully conclude yet, but what I'm curious about is that, like, let's say picture yourself in 5 years from now, or even in a year. You're in New York, you've had maybe some other projects that have led you up to that point. Who and what is Leighton doing there? Who is Leighton as a human being? What's happening? Kind of paint a picture for us, really manifest what that looks like for you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So at the top of my vision board, someone that I really want to work with is Ryan Murphy.
Oh,
yeah. I love Ryan Murphy's work. Ideally, I would love to be on a hit show of his. Right? Whether it's a season of Monster, whether it's his new show that he's working on, Beauty. I have my eyes on that script, Ryan.
Is that something that hasn't even hit?
It hasn't.
Networks yet. Oh, okay.
It hasn't. They're in pre-production right now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Consistently working on a project of that magnitude that fills me financially, artistically, spiritually, all in all the ways, right? And and when I'm not working, I'm able to just unwind with family and loved ones and vacation freely, not having to, and still creating my own work, still writing and still getting projects going with my production company. And that I know
that sounds pretty
short answer, but
that's
you pinpointed it though. I mean, that's
what
you want.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer in anything that we have with our interviews or our dialogues. I like to call them chats. But again, with that being said, like if you were to give your ethos, your stamp, what are a few key words that would describe your way of showing up in your industry? Like how do you represent in that way?
The work that I'm drawn to is the work that I like to do as well, where I like to say it's a good mixture of heart and humor. I like to make you laugh first, and once I lube you up with some comedy, I then hit you with something profound, right?
Yeah, I get that.
It's like,
Shock and awe. Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
It's like, there was a message the whole time.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good edging session.
Yes.
Sorry, Rachel.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I don't. I'm used to you. What? I don't get.
If you're not used to me, you're never gonna get used to me now.
Well,
Let's just
yeah,
say that.
right. I know. The first, I mean, we don't have to go back in time, but we will for a split moment here. The first time I ever met Hero, he asked me if I was having a hot flash. The first time, and I'm like, dude,
True.
I'm like 30, early 30s. Like, what are you talking about? Anyway, that's another story for another time. But that's what I mean. I'm used to you. I know you.
Yeah.
And I still love you.
And how long has the Part of My Mind podcast been going on?
We've been doing Part of My Mind basically the podcast started under a different name, which was in 2020 when a lot of these podcasts started booming up. We've been doing Part of My Mind only for a couple months, really, but we rebranded the podcast last year, and we're only starting to come back into recording in the last few months.
Yeah, so we had like a bit of a hiatus.
Oh,
yeah.
We've been best friends since 2015. I mean, the very short synopsis is that Rachel was teaching yoga full time and was a studio owner of her own business for a couple years in North Vancouver, and I was and still am a aspiring yoga teacher and educator in the community, and acquiring my yoga therapist education, which will be more of a full-time work, hopefully. But when Rachel was looking for teachers, I got referred to her from someone else in one of my classes. And when we met, we identified a great friendship, and I realized that was more important than having a potentially shorter term working relationship. So I said,
I couldn't afford him, basically.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, she couldn't.
As a teacher, like, you start a new studio and it's like, would you be willing to teach for $25 an hour? Like, no, I mean, that's pretty cheap. But actually, that's it. Just as we start to wrap up here, because we do like to thread mental health into our podcast too. Yep. And we're talking about fitness and wellness. I think I kind of read through the grapevine that you are like, you're really into fitness as well. And maybe is that kind of something that helps with if you have any mental health challenges or anything, is that kind of what keeps you grounded maybe? Or if you could talk about what keeps you grounded in the industry that you're in?
1000%.
Yeah.
What's so funny is that throughout my youth, I'm in my early 30s. Okay, so
same age as Hero. You guys 32. Are young.
But so saying throughout my youth is so dramatic. Like,
I know.
Throughout my youth, I would go to the gym with hopes of just getting hot and pretty, But something shifted during the pandemic where when I work out just to be in a better state of mind, I'm just one workout away from being in a better mood, right? And staying grounded and feeling in my body and present. That's when it stuck. That's when I was able to be consistent with it.
Yeah.
And fitness is definitely an anchor in my care package, my mental health care package. I work out like five times a week.
Good for you.
And it just puts me in a great mood. And of course, I mean, I do like the muscles.
I was like, hello, thirst trap. There we go. That's a nice way to end.
It is.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that in terms of other people that might be coming up after you, people that are maybe in the Gen Z generation or Gen Alpha, I suppose, as well. What are certain things you might say to those aspiring individuals that are potentially following in your footsteps?
What I would say to them is don't waste time trying to be what you think the industry wants of you. Right? Be your authentic self. If you can find your voice, if you can find your purpose, and know that can change within years, right? What you want at 18 doesn't have to be the same thing at 25, at 30, right? You are allowed to change. You're allowed to grow, and give yourself permission to do that.
That's beautiful. So as we wrap this up here, Leighton, how I don't know, just want to plug the show a little bit for yourself? How can people follow you?
Oh, of course. You can follow me on
It's about
Instagram.
you.
Just let an actor talk about themselves.
Mhm.
That's an easy
You now have 30 seconds. No, I'm just kidding. 30 minutes.
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram. That's my social media vice of choice at Living with Law. And I have 3 projects coming out this month. Day Players is available. You can watch that on YouTube at Image Killer's channel. Settle Down comes out on Valentine's Day via OutTV, Apple TV, Prime Video. And lastly, if you want to go to the theaters, get some popcorn and watch me at a Cineplex movie near you, you can see Morningside. I play a supporting role in that film throughout Canada.
Okay.
Yes,
That's good.
Yeah.
Good to to kind of clarify that.
Yes, Canadian Cineplexes.
Yeah, but coming to a theater near you, I would just say in the next few years, just watch out for Leighton in the US too. So there you go.
Absolutely. On a Ryan Murphy production.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, guys.
That's perfect. Leighton, it was so nice to talk to you.
Yeah.
And come back anytime. And good luck with everything. We look forward to watching your career.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. And if you're in Vancouver anytime or you're in the Okanagan, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, look up the Okanagan. You're going to be like, oh my God.
I most certainly will.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Thank you, guys.
Great.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.